1907, the first known Japanese animation was Katsudo Shashin, and it was made by a creator who is unknown. 1923, the Great Kanto earthquake destroyed several animations and slowed the production of animations down a lot relative to the United States at that time. 1945, the first full-length Japanese movie was called Momotaro's Sacred Sailor, also known as Momotaro's Divine Sea Warrior. This served as a piece of propaganda during World War II. Then, in 1948, the creators founded what is now known as Toei Animations. 1958, Haku Jaden, otherwise known as Legend of the White Serpent, created by Toei Animation, was the first animation to be fully colored. 1963, Astro Boy was produced by Fuji TV and became the first anime television show. 1960s. The 60s is where we really began to see the typical anime style. Pretty classic stuff like the characters having big eyes and all the other facial features being relatively small. A common trait with the animes at this time were lots had sci-fi aspects. This is because during the time the space race was on, and it lasted about the whole decade. Shows like Astro Boy, Gigantor, Space Ace, and Prince Planet really made mecha anime the way it is viewed today. 1970s. The 1970s is where we began to see more familiar faces. The 70s were very impactful on the anime industry, as you can see how it progressed into anime today. Similar styles to the 60s with shows like Gundam, Doraemon, Heidi, Girl of the Alps, and Cutie Honey, and many more. During this time you can see lots of genres and women protagonists. This is due to the popularity of anime, and during this time there had been lots of activism for women's rights in Japan. 1980s. In the 80s, we can begin to see some typical anime designs: big hair, big eyes, thin lips. You can also see the style of nose that is very common in the 90s start to appear. Toei Animation made Dragon Ball, and Ghibli Studios became very popular with shows like My Neighbor Totoro, Grave of Fireflies, Castle in the Sky, and many more. The amount of animes produced at the time just goes to show that Japan had an economic boom. They had finally recovered from the atomic bombings, and unemployment rate was under 5%. The 1990s were a very good decade for both anime and the Japanese economy. 1990s. Anime was here to stay. The 90s provided several animes that are still continued to this day. Big eyes, big hair, small pointed noses, and really cool intros. Shows like One Piece, Sailor Moon, Cardcaptor Sakura, Cowboy Bebop, Pokemon, Hunter x Hunter, and Neon Genesis Evangelion were made during this time. During the 90s, Japan had entered their lost decade. Many people were forced to find different career paths, and others felt a lack of creativity. With the publishing of Neon Genesis Evangelion, you can begin to see much more animes air, as the show had sparked a light of creativity within the anime industry. 2000s. The 2000s were a great time for anime. People's styles branched out even more. Some great shows from this time were Yu-Gi-Oh!, Ghost Stories, Inuyasha, Ouran High School Host Club, Death Note, Soul Eater, Bleach, K-On!, and so many more. Japan, just exiting its lost decade, had lost their prime minister. Anime was continuing to become more and more widespread, and with the release of the PlayStation 3, you can begin to see popular video games turning into animes and vice versa. As for America, you can begin to see shows like Avatar and The Boondocks take similar styles inspired from animes. 2010s. The 2010s were a great decade for anime. The 2010 style was relatively very prominent. Everyone had big, shiny, round eyes, small noses, small lips, and lots of shows. The hair was flatter than it was in the 80s and 90s. Popular shows include, but not limited to, Attack on Titan, Sword Art Online, Your Lie in April, One Punch Man, Haikyuu, Banana Fish, Assassination Classroom, and Angels of Death. In this decade, you can see the rising of gay relationships. During the 2010s, Japan had lots of gay right activism. Anime had also been branching out even more with different styles and different genres. 2020s. The anime that had came out so far in the 2020s have been so good, and I can't wait to see what is yet to come. I can't really see a direct style as of right now, but I can tell that so many great shows are coming out. Obviously, 2020 was the beginning of the pandemic, and from March to July, lots of animes had been postponed. In conclusion, this project has taught me that there is so much that goes on behind the scenes, and that anime is affected by history in more ways than we could possibly know.